The first time Nathan pinned me against his mother's refrigerator, his calloused hands yanking down my leggings as his teeth grazed my neck, I gasped at the heat of his bare skin against mine. My back arched as he lifted me onto the kitchen counter, his fingers digging into the soft flesh of my ass, his breath ragged. "Look at you," he growled, tearing open my blouse, my 55-year-old boobs spilling free as I clawed at his belt. His dick sprang out thick and eager, and I choked out, "Ouch." "It's huge." Slowly, "It's been a while." But he did not slow. He plunged into me, my pussy stretching to take him, the pain and pleasure blurring as I gripped the edge of the counter. Susan's porcelain rooster clock watched from the wall, ticking louder than my guilt, as Nathan's thrusts cracked open a decade of loneliness. When I came, biting his shoulder to muffle my cries, I tasted blood, his or mine. I did not care. For the first time in 10 years, I felt like a woman, not a ghost. And I hated myself for how alive it made me. Welcome, dear viewers. To those returning, your loyalty humbles me. To newcomers, I cannot wait for you to hit subscribe. Your support fuels this raw, unfiltered journey. Share your thoughts below. Your voices matter. Now, let me unravel how I became the villain in my own story. My name is Sarah Whitaker. At 55, I had perfected the art of invisibility. My husband, Mark, spoke to me only to critique the undercooked salmon or the overdrawn bank account. Susan Hartley, my best friend since college, filled the void with wine nights and gossip about her ungrateful son, Nathan. She called him a failure, a 27-year-old bartender with tattoos and a smirk that made even church ladies blush. I met Nathan properly last June. Susan had invited us to her lakeside cottage, a tradition since our husbands left us for golf and gin. That weekend, Mark canceled, again, and Nathan arrived unannounced, shirtless and sweaty from a motorcycle ride. He raised an eyebrow at my blush, and when Susan scoffed, "Don't flatter yourself, Sarah. He's half your age," something in me snapped. We began accidentally meeting at the gym. Nathan would spot me during squats, his hands lingering on my waist, teasing me for using weights lighter than his coffee order. He brought me lattes, called me Sarah instead of Mom's friend, and listened to me rant about Mark's indifference. "You deserve to feel wanted," he murmured once, brushing a thumb over my wrist. I should have run. Instead, I leaned in. The weeks after our first encounter were a blur of sweat and shame. Nathan's hands were never gentle. They gripped my hips like he wanted to bruise me, his fingers digging into the softness of my ass as he pushed me onto the motel bed. The room reeked of cigarettes and desperation, the sheets scratchy against my bare skin. He tore my blouse, his mouth rough on my nipples, sucking until I gasped. "You're fucking obsessed with me," he growled, his dick already hard against my thigh. I didn't deny it. I was obsessed with the way he moaned when I slid my hand into his jeans, with the primal hunger in his eyes as he flipped me onto my stomach, my face pressed into the pillow. He didn't ask permission. He never did. His hands pinned my wrists as he shoved inside me, my pussy aching from the force. "Say you want this," he demanded, his breath hot on my neck. I choked out the words, my voice breaking as he thrust deeper. It wasn't love. It wasn't even lust. It was punishment for Susan, for Mark, for the decades I had spent playing the good wife. When he finished, biting my shoulder to muffle his groan, I stared at the water-stained ceiling and wondered how many others had lied to themselves in this same bed. Afterward, Nathan traced the scar on his shoulder, his tone casual as he recounted Susan's absence during his hospital stay. His fingers still smelled like me. "She never showed up," he said, flicking ash from his cigarette onto the floor. Too busy with her perfect life. I reached for him, my fingers grazing his chest, but He caught my wrist. Do not. His laugh was cold. This isn't a romance, Sarah. You're just the easiest way to hurt her. The lies grew bolder. I told Mark I joined a book club, though I had not read a novel since our daughter left for college. Susan believed I was seeing a physical therapist for my back. Nathan reveled in the deception. He dared me to meet him at a diner on the edge of town, where truckers and teenagers shared milkshakes. We held hands under the table, his thumb circling my palm, until a waitress who knew Susan walked by. I froze, but Nathan grinned. Relax, he whispered. Nobody sees you. That's the problem, isn't it? By autumn, we were careless. Nathan left his gym bag in my car, a black duffel smelling of protein powder and ambition. I meant to return it, but Mark surprised me with a rare dinner date, and I forgot. The next morning, Susan called. Her voice was a blade. Can I borrow your SUV? The dealership servicing mine. Panic clawed my throat as I remembered the bag. I raced home, but she was already in the driveway, her face pale as she held Nathan's faded Iron Man keychain, a relic from his childhood. She had bought him. Her eyes met mine, and in that silence, I heard 30 years of friendship shatter. Susan did not scream. She did not cry. She stood in my driveway, Nathan's keychain dangling from her fingers like evidence at a trial, and said, "Explain this." Her voice was calm, as if she were asking me to pass the salt. But her eyes, wide, glassy, fractured, told me she already knew. The truth hung between us, thicker than the autumn fog. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. My knees trembled as if the ground beneath me had turned to sand. Susan tossed the keychain into the dirt, her lips curling into a sneer I had never seen before. "You disgust me," she whispered. Then she turned and left, her SUV screeching down the road like a wounded animal. Mark found the text that night. I had hidden nothing, convinced myself I was invincible. He picked up my phone when it buzzed on the kitchen counter, Nathan's name flashing beside the words, "I need to see you." Mark's face drained of color as he scrolled, his hands shaking so violently the device clattered to the floor. He did not speak. He packed his suitcase, his movements methodical, and paused at the door. "I hope he was worth it," he said, his voice hollow. The slam of the door echoed louder than any argument we had ever had. I drove to Nathan's apartment, my vision blurred by tears. He answered in sweatpants, his chest bare, smirking as if he had been expecting me. When I collapsed against him, sobbing, he stroked my hair and said, "It had to happen." I pulled back, confused. His expression hardened, the playful charm replaced by something colder. "Did you think this was about you?" He scoffed. "My mother spent my life pretending I did not exist. Now she will never forget me." The room spun. I stumbled, gripping the edge of his couch. "You used me," I rasped. He shrugged. "You let me." The next morning, Susan posted photos on Facebook, a collage of my lies. Screenshots of Nathan's text to me, time-stamped gym selfies we had taken together, even the motel receipt he had slipped into my purse as a souvenir. Her caption read, "Friendship dies in the light." My phone buzzed endlessly, calls from neighbors, venomous messages from Susan's sisters, a meme from some teenager asking if I needed a walker to keep up with Nathan. I closed the curtains, but the world had already seen inside. Divorce papers arrived in an envelope, Mark's signature slashed across the final page like a scar. He took the house, the savings, the silverware his mother had gifted us. He did not take the shame that clung to me like a second skin. I rented a mini apartment above a laundromat, with thin walls enough to hear strangers' conversations, their laughter a knife to my ribs. Susan never called. She changed her number, her email, her grocery store. I learned through mutual friends she had sold the lakeside cottage, the place where Nathan first unraveled me. Her silence was absolute, a void where 3 decades of inside jokes and shared secrets had once lived. Nathan disappeared. His apartment sat empty, the landlord tossing his belongings into dumpsters, banned t-shirts, a half-empty cologne bottle, a stack of Star Wars comics I had teased him about. A week after the scandal broke, a letter arrived in my mailbox, his handwriting jagged and rushed. Sarah, you asked me once if I felt guilty. The truth? I would do it all again. My mother told me I was a mistake my entire life. Now she knows what it feels like to have one. The motel maid thought you were my aunt. Work on that. I crumpled the note, but his words had already carved themselves into me. He had not loved me. He had not even desired me. I was a prop in his revenge, a middle-aged cliché he would recount to buddies over beers. I stopped eating, stopped showering. My mini apartment reeked of takeout containers and self-loathing. One night, I swallowed a handful of sleeping pills with cheap Merlot, convinced the world would not notice if I faded. But my body betrayed me, vomiting the poison onto the stained carpet. I opted for therapy to avoid further embarrassment. Dr. Ellis, a woman with kind eyes and no wedding ring, asked me to describe the guilt. I told her it felt like drowning in a shallow pool. She nodded. Good. That means you still want to breathe. I began to walk. 1 block, then 2, then 5. I passed Susan's old house, now occupied by a young family, their Christmas lights twinkling without irony. I wondered if she ever drove by my laundromat, if she ever hesitated. Nathan's Instagram surfaced months later, a photo of him skiing in Aspen, arm around a blonde whose smile mirrored mine at 25. I blocked him, then unblocked him, then smashed my phone against the wall. By spring, the panic attacks lessened. I planted succulents on the fire escape, their stubborn green tendrils pushing through cracks in the concrete. They did not forgive me, but they grew. 5 years later, I sit on the fire escape of my apartment, the succulents now wild and overgrown, their tendrils spilling over the rusted railing like liquid emerald. The laundromat below hums with the mundane rhythm of life, cycles of dirt and cleanliness, stains and renewal. I work there part-time, folding strangers' sheets and socks, finding solace in the simplicity of order. My hands, once trembling with guilt, now move with purpose. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Susan's handwriting, looping, deliberate, stopped my breath. Inside a single sentence, I miss who we were. No apology. No invitation. Just an ache suspended in ink. I held it to my chest, the paper crisp against my thrift store sweater, and wept for the women we had buried. I did not write back. Some ghosts are best left unspoken. Nathan is a meme now. A TikTok trend where influencers mock MILF hunters with his smirk superimposed over clips of cougars and cubs. He married the Aspen blonde, had a daughter, and named her Serena. Too close to Sarah, I wonder, or just another coincidence in a life built on them. I do not hate him. Hate requires energy I reserve for waking up each morning. Dr. Ellis says forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. I have forgiven Mark for his cold exits, Susan for her silence, even Nathan for his calculated cruelty. But myself? That is a work in progress. I trace the lines on my palms, wondering if regret has its own lifeline. Last week, I passed the old motel. It's a parking lot now, the neon sign replaced by solar lamps. I stood where room 114 once housed our lies, the asphalt warm beneath my feet, and laughed until my ribs ached. Not from joy, but from the absurdity of it all. How a single spark could incinerate a life, yet leave the roots intact. I am not proud of my story, but it is mine. The woman who clung to a boy's vengeance to feel seen, the friend who traded decades of trust for a fleeting heartbeat of desire. She is as real as the scars on my wrists, the laugh lines around my eyes. To my viewers and listeners, this journey was not easy to share, but your support has been my compass. If this story resonated, please let me know in the comments. Have you ever rebuilt from ashes? How do you forgive the unforgivable? Like, share, and subscribe to keep these raw, unfiltered conversations alive. Your voices turn pain into purpose. Thank you for being my witness. Sarah Whitaker.